there's too many stories of enormous men that they had to kill.
Yeah, yeah. And their history, their oral tradition goes so far back.
Yeah, I mean, imagine we're talking 10,000.
Yeah.
Now that we know that human beings lived in North America 22,000 plus years ago, right? So the fossilized footprints that they found in New Mexico. So that's 22,000 years. So imagine 22,000 years ago, these things were a real thing. How many of them have you found?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't found any bones of humans from 22,000 years ago in North America, have you? No, right? So why?
Exactly.
Does the Smithsonian have them, these motherfuckers? If they really do have a giant down there,
I
can you
think
imagine?
they probably do, Joe.
Can you imagine there's a tomb that you have to go into? It's like a vault. The guy cranks open the vault.
It's like the history version of Area 51.
You see a fucking head the size of this table, and you're like, what?
That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta kill them all.
Maybe.
Which totally makes sense. Why would you let that motherfucker live?
Right.
You got a 10-foot tall, 12-foot tall.
It's a problem.
Yeah, 2,000-pound human
Yeah.
that eats people.
That is a problem. I wonder, I always get this, because like the Watchers themselves are never described as giant beings.
Right.
I wonder where the giant came into the equation.
Well, isn't it us compared to them?
Maybe.
Let's look at
Maybe
this.
there were slight aliens, like alien greys or
Sure.
something. And,
Well, look at the description of the Nephilim. How they destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Like, they created this thing that consumed everything, destroyed everything, including mankind. Like, what does that sound like?
It sounds like us.
That's not like us.
Sounds like us.
Right. And also, like, you're saying mankind. Like, mankind, what are you saying? Are you saying aliens? Like, so, like, who wrote this?
Yeah.
Like, what is
Yeah,
mankind?
for
Like,
sure.
what does that term mean? I bet you're not saying man. I bet you're probably using an ancient language to describe whatever the dominant force was at the time that's writing all this down. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What is these Watchers? They mated with humans? So what are they? And they created something that destroyed everything? What? So, okay, what is that? What are you talking about? And doesn't that sound exactly like humans? Like, what do? We fucking destroy everything.
Yeah.
We destroy everything. We light things on fire. We suck all the fish out of the ocean. We throw our garbage in it. We are so destructive.
Yeah.
We're so consuming. We consume. You know? We're one of the only animals that dies because we eat too much.
Yeah.
Right? We're one of the only animals.
Yeah. Well, we're one of the only example on this planet of the level of intelligence that we have. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, really quite phenomenal when you consider all of the various avenues of evolution that have been given the opportunity.
We have a massive leap. Yeah.
Phenomenal. A leap that has to, in some way, have been intervened with, in my opinion. I mean, it's such a quantum leap in our ability of cognition and the brain size. I mean, I do find the slow gate theory very interesting, and the concept of using psychedelics, and I think there's a role to play in that for sure. But I just think that when you have such a novel trajectory change for every other creature, every other animal on this planet, that tells me that there's something fundamentally accelerated in humans, and whether that can just be put down to shamanic use of psychedelics, I don't know. I think that when you invoke again all of these various theologic stories, it becomes clear that something is interfacing with us, and perhaps at one point we were interfacing with them. And there was a communication and a relation that has since long degraded after cataclysmic outreaches and
I think the evolution that came out of psychedelics and primitive man was the escape from the barbaric nature of our roots.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily the development of the human brain. I think it's probably a way to use the human brain with its primate background, but soften the ego. Right?
Yeah.
And endorse a feeling of community. Like, and promote the feeling of community and love and the connectedness that you get from psychedelics. So it will allow you to traverse the timelines between incredibly barbaric hunter-gatherers with stone-tipped tools to agrarian societies where people are all living together and cooperating, and it makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is the giant leap to being a human in the first place.
No.
It's kooky.
It is.
And it's in the Bible. At least it's in the book of Enoch.
It's
That's
there.
the crazy part about it, is that they literally describe what we're, and not just us, like many people have theorized, like, have we been a product, are we a product of genetic manipulation? Are we a product of accelerated evolution?
Well, again, my own experiences, I just feel like there is quite obviously a vast intelligence spectrum out there, in my opinion, and I think it goes beyond our own perception of space and time. I think that there are likely things that can come in from, you know, realms that we just don't really believe are real, like the astral, and you know, even the realm of the imagination is an interesting thing. What is this place inside of our heads that we can instantaneously create anything we want, and all things, including everything on this table, once came from inside someone's mind? Like, we are excretors of ideas into reality. We kind of render reality into something that nothing else does. And I think that there is a spark within us that speaks to what people would call a divine spark, for sure. And maybe that is a divine spark. Maybe it's a highly intelligent race that intervened and it gave us that spark. But we are entirely different. And I do think that as we begin to get deeper and deeper into kind of like the physics of our reality and our fundamental connection to it, we start realizing that our physiology, our body is like an antenna, it's like a technology, it's an instrument for picking up on signals and perhaps even consciousness itself. I don't know if you're familiar with microtubules and the orchestrated objective reduction theory by Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roderick Penrose.
How many times do you bring that up to people and they go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking
about? Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I hang out with some weird fucking people, but I just thought it might come up. I definitely have the Duncan Truss and say microtubules, man.
Yes.
Microtubules. No, so I did an interview with an anesthesiologist called Stuart Hameroff, and him and Sir Roderick Penrose developed a model called the Orchestrated Objective Reduction Theory, or ORC-OR, looking at microtubules, which are these tiny helical structures inside our neurons. And I forget the exact metric, but it's something ridiculous, like 10,000 microtubules per neuron. So it's just, you know, this incredible architecture of these tiny little structures that apparently are so small that they interact with quantum vibrations and fields. That's how fine and tiny they are. And the reason I bring this up is because I think that we're getting deeper now with things like the ORC-OR theory into looking at the structures within humanity that actually seem to be receiving nodes or receptive nodes for energy that could then be translated into consciousness. The whole idea of, are we generating consciousness from our brain, or are we receiving consciousness and we're just a conduit for it?
Yeah.
And I think the evidence is getting a little bit more clearer that we're a conduit. And I just wonder if that's evolution naturally, or if that's interaction from these others that have come and meddled with our genealogy.
It's a good question that we'll have to ponder when I come back from peeing.
You do that.
We'll pause.
No worries.
Alright, where were we?
Well, Jamie brought something up, which is a really interesting video that I took when I was out in Saqqara in Egypt, again with Jeffrey Drum, who was taking me through. And yeah, this is an awesome place. So just for context before we play it, yeah, take it back to the piano. This is inside the Pyramid of Unas in Saqqara, and this is deep down inside of it, inside what they call the burial chamber. Now you see all of these amazing Arabic artwork that's been quite relatively crudely scratched in. Now you see that glow? That's actually calcite crystal, and that's limestone. Now the entire back of this chamber, like this wall, the back wall, the other wall, and the ceiling and the floor is made out of a slab of calcite crystal. But what's really interesting about this is that when you take a flashlight and you put it in a certain angle on this wall, something very interesting appears. Boom. An otherwise invisible etching of an individual. You can see the navel, the belly button, and the arms, and this is completely invisible until you get that flashlight. Now these have been actually smoothed. Promo for my episode, but these have actually been smoothed into the calcite crystal itself, and then obviously these Aramaic writings and pictographs have been scratched on afterwards. So clearly, this is the original artwork of this chamber, but it's not perceptible without a very specific angle of light that creates the shadows. And these are on the other side of the wall as well. I think in this clip maybe he doesn't show it, but very, very strange. Now this entire pyramid is acoustically profound. I mean, the acoustics inside of this are unbelievable. The amount of echo that you get. And the entire Saqqara site, we went around it, and I mean, my god, it's a weird site, man. You've got, again, just incredibly huge slabs of rose quartz granite, and there's one area that's like on the other side of the pyramid, not even near the entrance, which is just this huge portcullis made of granite with interlocking pieces where clearly another piece of stone was slid between them. but this is nowhere even connected to the pyramid infrastructure, and they don't say anything about it. Strewn across this entire place, you've got huge blocks of granite with drill holes in them. You can see the striation marks going all the way through them. And his opinion, Jeffrey's, and I think there's merit to it because in Cairo Museum, there's a little cabinet of laboratory equipment, like jugs and apothecary bottles that were recovered from Saqqara, including a little plate. There's like a little plaque, this wasn't included, this is put into the actual exhibition, but it's tucked into the corner of Cairo Museum. You have to find it, you have to really look for it. There's a little plaque saying that the area of Saqqara was a laboratory. And again, like, this completely contradicts all of the things that they say about ancient Egypt, but it's in the Cairo Museum. It's literally written as the ancient laboratory of Saqqara. And so, you know, what's going on there? Why is there a contradiction like that that's being acknowledged? And it's truly just an incredible place with these shadow figures and the acoustic resonance of the site, the rose granite.
So why do you think that it was originally these carvings were in the wall and then they wrote on it afterwards?
Well, I think it's just another case of a later civilization coming across an incredibly amazing place and carving on it. Maybe they didn't even see these figures because you have to have a very specific type of light to actually be able to see them. You have to get it at that angle. It's possible.
You can't detect by looking at it. There's some variation.
I mean, you can see when you actually know what you're looking
like
for.
A little bit of wiggle.
But barely anything. It's like really hard to perceive. So maybe they didn't even know that these things were down there when they went. There's another part of this when you're going through the chambers where it's rose granite, and then plaster, where you've got hieroglyphics put on the top, and you can actually see the plaster kind of bleeding off into the rose granite. So it feels like they found it, they slapped some hieroglyphs on it, they, you know, put their own veneration around it, but it was not an original structure of the Egyptians. Once again, a place that they found and settled around. But it's just weird that in the Cairo Museum you have like this tiny little shelf full of beakers and measuring jug type things, and it says that the lab complex of Saqqara. It just doesn't make any sense in comparison to what they're trying to tell us is the reality of this place. So that's, yeah, that's what.
It's all weird.
It's all weird.
Yeah, that's why the bottleneck of talking about this stuff is so infuriating.
This is the same place, by the way, we have the Serapeum, you know, the 80-ton boxes that are precision marble top, the ones that Christopher Dunn went down into. It was like, it's a machine.
Yeah, let's pull up a photo of those, please. They're strange.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think they were doing with those things? What was the purpose?
Well, you know what's interesting is
what was the thrill?
They were so these things are absolutely incredible, and there's a few questions with this. One, if you go onto that image, zoom out, just go to that image on the right where you've got the entrance, just the entrance into the, this one here. So this is the entrance into the Serapeum, or Serapeum, however you want to pronounce it. It's a subterranean labyrinth. And these corridors are extremely small. There's actually a half-finished one sitting in the middle of a corridor, and you can kind of really get a scope for the size. But these are 70 to 80 ton granite sarcophagi. They attribute it to the Apis bulls. They say that there was a cult around this region that venerated the Apis bulls, and that these were burial chambers for the Apis bulls. But you know what's funny about that is the only thing they have to evidence this is no bones of bulls or anything like that. What they have is a single hieroglyph on one of these boxes of a bull. That's it. They have a hieroglyph with a bull on it, and that's why they attribute it to the Apis bulls, regardless of the fact that these are precision carved 70 to 80 ton granite marble top smooth boxes with even more precision inside. They're even more precise on the inside, which is strange. You wouldn't necessarily need them to be that precise if they're just funerary boxes, but the precision is actually more impressive internally than it is externally. And
how long would it take to make one of those?
My
Here's
God,
the question. Make it, move it, put it in place.
Make it, move it.
That bull's long dead. Let it go.
Let it go, dude. Like, it's
Dead
not
for
that
years by the
important.
time you finish that thing. That's
These
crazy.
things are nuts, man. Absolutely nuts. And
There's
this
so
is one of the big things that Christopher Dunn saw and was just like, no, there's just no way.
Look at the people standing next to those
Yeah,
stones.
I've been inside.
That someone moved it there and then put that other one on top of it.
Unbelievable.
When? Who? How?
Yeah, and again, like, you know,
To say that's not a mystery is nuts.
it is nuts. And also, if you go on that image where they're shining a light and someone's leaning on it, on like the right hand side, yeah, that one there. so many of these, the boxes themselves are so precise, but the actual writing is extremely crude. It's been scratched on. It's basically just been scratched on. And a lot of them, it kind of feels like, as a lot of these pharaohs did, they just went and slapped a cartouche on it. I own this. This is mine.
Right.
And so, you know, the exterior work contradicts the advancement of the actual box itself. It doesn't make sense. There's only one in here that's actually got 3D, actual carved in artwork, and that one actually does make sense, but these ones are all chicken scratch. It's just been scratched on.
Of course.
So, which is what people do.
There's, I mean, a lot of history of human beings doing that to ancient times.
If you got a third image, actually, that's an interesting image, because you've got these, such low quality, it's a shame. You can actually see these dimples where they've smoothed out the stone, and what's weird about this is that, so if these were funerary boxes, you would expect the external to be the most impressive, because that's what people are going to see, right? Mm-hmm. But instead, you actually have a lot of malformation on the boxes, and one of the theories about this, and this is something that, there we go, it's a good example of this, one of the theories about this, and one that Jeffrey Drum brought up to me, is that whatever was going on inside of these cases, the exterior had to have absolutely zero critical imperfections. So any cracks, anything that was problematic would have been dissolved out, smoothed away. And you have this weird kind of dimpling on a lot of these. In some way you can actually see a crack where the crack's been removed and it's been kind of smoothed out. And then inside, it's like 90-degree, just perfect. And so it just kind of contradicts the idea of it being for the, you know, a funerary purpose. You'd expect the outside to be absolutely perfect and beautiful, but it's not. It's all kind of mal-shaped, and as if they were trying to remove any sort of cracks, anything that could cause a structural problem. And then inside they're perfect. So it does make me wonder about the real purpose behind it.
Why are you assuming that it would be cracks? Why wouldn't it just be that they didn't have a need to finish the top of it?
Because some of them,
carpentry.
Well, some of them are finished quite profoundly, and then you have others that have got these big dimples in them, where it just looks like they were trying to remove anything that might have been a critical, like, damage to the structure. Obviously, this is guesswork.
Right. The purpose of that would be to keep it from cracking.
To keep it from cracking all the way through. I just find it very interesting that the inside is more impressive than the outside for something that's meant to be, you know, viewed as a funerary box.
Right. An enormous funerary box.
An enormous funerary box.
Does anybody have a wacky far-out theory of what they were actually for?
I mean, there's always some. I mean, one of them I find interesting is the idea that it could be like some form of like a sound bath, like an isolatory chamber where they would go into and have like some form of experiences.
You gonna count on someone to move that fucking thing?
You know, there's such a strong evidential trail of acoustic sciences in the ancient past, especially archaeoacoustics in terms of the actual architecture itself, like the pyramids. They're designed to resonate like one of the most interesting places that I've been to in terms of looking at the acoustics of places as well is Malta, the island of Malta. And the island of Malta is very interesting because when the Bronze Age settlers from Sicily and other areas of Italy came over to Malta for the first time, they discovered an island that was absolutely littered with megalithic sites. And Malta has got the highest concentration of megalithic sites in the world, but there were no people. They all gone. No one knows who they were. It was just a land full of these incredible megalithic temples. And one in particular, called the Hypogeum of Halsephieni. Now, the Hypogeum is fascinating, dude. It's a subterranean, huge temple that was discovered by road workers, and they were literally just chipping away at the road, and then it collapsed in, and they find this huge, what they call a necropolis, because they found hundreds of skeletons down here. This thing is incredible. This is all carved out of the limestone, and it is a overlapping geometric series of chambers that is so obviously acoustically tuned that if you actually, if you wanted to search Hypogeum acoustics, it will come up with studies where they've noticed that this is absolutely a deliberately acoustically tuned complex. Go on the actual website, not images. That's an interesting one. Whether or not it's entirely accurate, someone's comparing the Hypogeum to the Cumenium. specifically because of the fact this place absolutely is acoustically tuned to resonate between 110 and 115 hertz, which is the bandwidth to activate certain brain states like alpha and theta brain, where you can get into more meditative states of consciousness. And only 20% of this site is accessible to the public, 70% of it's locked off, and they treat it like a skiff. They take your phone, they take your camera, you can't bring any audio recording devices into it, nothing. Very curated tour for 30 minutes and then out.
Why is 70% of it locked off?
That's a great question. They say it's for preservation of the site because it's such a delicate Neolithic. It's prehistoric. They believe it's prehistoric. And again, this speaks to what was going on in prehistory, because this is an acoustically profound series of chambers that have been carved out of the limestone bedrock by people that we attribute bone antler tools to. Chipping away at it with bone antler tools, and they made something as profound.
So when you say prehistoric,
well, they dated to about 5,000 years ago. Mainstream.
What?
Mainstream. Yeah.
Carved.
It's
Carved out of the bedrock.
Out of the bedrock. It's a huge thing. And what's even weirder about it is that they found these elongated skulls in the bottom. And I've seen one personally. I went to the Museum of Valletta in Malta and saw one of these elongated skulls. What's very interesting about these skulls is that they actually lack the sagittal suture that we have going down the back of the head. So, we have this sagittal suture which pushes the growth plates together as you come through the birth canal. Not that one. The third one, the fourth one, that one, and then there's other images which are actually the one below it where you've got skulls recovered from the hypogeum. Yeah, so this is the elongated skull that's only got a horizontal suture, no vertical suture, which is what all humans have, vertical sagittal suture. Now, apparently, hundreds of elongated skulls were discovered in the hypogeum, but only a couple of them are on display in Valletta. And I've got a couple of friends who are in, have you heard of the Knights of Malta?
Yeah.
So kind of a secret order, a bit like Freemasonry. It's spawned from the Vatican. The Vatican basically threw these people into Malta and said, fuck off and go being witched and stuff over there. But now it's a very connected, kind of like with the Vatican order, the Knights of Malta. Very powerful group. Very much in the geopolitical world stage. And a friend of mine who's within that was like, yeah, they bring out this book once a year in the Valletta Museum, and it's detailing the skulls of the hypogeum, and apparently tells a story of how the locals would throw bodies down there because there are beings down there that they wanted to prevent from coming up to the surface. And this is the strange thing, is the hypogeum is full of normal human bodies, hundreds, not buried with respect, but just piled down there. And then also elongated skulls. And the story is, according to this very ancient book that they bring out and put out once a year, you have to be lucky to catch it. It apparently describes that they were using this as a place to discard bodies to prevent these creatures from coming up to the surface.
They were feeding them?
Feeding them.
So when people would die, they would just throw them down that hole? Or were people bad people?
Maybe, throw them down that hole
So these elongated skull things were eating people?
Well, that's the connection we might make from that kind of connotation from these books, but that's certainly something that is rolled out in the Valletta Museum once a year if you get to go there and see it. So that,
is that like an ancient version of Scientology? Somebody make all this up?
Dude, I don't know, but in terms
very
of
strange that there's
the hypogeum itself is
human skeletons down there.
Oh yeah, I did find a profound amount of them, which is why the mainstream labels it as a necropolis. But there's no burial respect being done. There's just piles of bodies, and again, it's just so profound.
It's called the Oracle Room?
Yes, the Oracle Room. Yeah, this is where the sound concentrates.
The acoustics comes to knife here. I guess it's me all along, but it's a problem.
During testing, a deep male voice tuned to these frequencies stimulated a resonance phenomenon throughout the hypogeum, creating bone-chilling effects. It was reported that the sounds echoed for up to 8 seconds. Archaeologist Fernando Coimbra said that he felt the sound crossing his body at high speed, leaving a sensation of relaxation. When it was repeated, the sensation returned, and he also had the illusion that the sound was reflected from his body to the ancient red ochre paintings on the walls. One can only imagine the experience in antiquity, standing in what must excuse me, in what must have been somewhat odorous dark, and listening to ritual chant while low light flickered over the bones of one's departed loved ones. Holy shit.
Yeah, dude.
I don't think it's
Yeah. So
Oh, so they made a drug house.
under all circumstances, ancient populations were able to obtain
Yes.
different states of consciousness without the use of drugs
Yeah.
or chemical substances.
Or maybe in
this
you know,
is
coordination.
this is the Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences and Binaural Beats, way before we were around. This is the original psychoacoustic architecture. The idea that ancient architecture is designed in a way to propagate acoustics that affect the human brain.
Now imagine, this is 5,000 years ago. And where did you
Or more.
learn that from?
Right.
How did you do that? Did you fail?
Right.
Did you learn? What's the science?
And another interesting
How do you know?
element is there are a lot of temple sites in Malta that look weirdly similar to Newgrange in Ireland. And Newgrange is another psychoacoustic temple, if you want to call it a temple. It's a huge mound if you look it up. But within it, they've done, again, acoustic studies, and it propagates infrasound, sound below the threshold of human hearing. And that's the stuff that reverberates through your chest cavity, through your bone structure. That's what that guy is describing. It's infrasonic sound. You know when you're like, yeah. And then there's a, oh, God, it's again Neolithic. I don't know the exact date, but it's Neolithic. And these spiral patterns are in the Hypogeum. Those spiral patterns are in the Hypogeum, in Red Ochre. This is Ireland. The same structure. That very famous Irish. This, by the way, is incredible because it's completely singular. There's no break in the line. That's a very hard piece of geometry to actually create at the time as well. It's extremely complex because all of this feeds into itself. There's no break in that line. It's a very complex geometry. But that same type of geometry is also found in the Hypogeum, and it's found in Red Ochre on the painting, these swirling kind of motifs. So it's very interesting. You have these weird correlations between places that were separated by entire oceans in Neolithic time.
Do you think that represents sound waves?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's about the flow of acoustics, the flow of movement and sound, and that was perhaps their interpretation, or perhaps they had a visual hallucination that gave them the idea of it being this kind of like swirling pattern. But yeah, I find this. Yeah, this is Ireland, and there's just some striking similarities between places like this and places in Malta. So again, it just leads into the idea that there was perhaps a globally maritime connected civilization that was using these psychoacoustic attributions in science to produce novel effects of consciousness, inducing brain hemisphere synchronization, just like they're trying to do in my ass with the CIA.
And here's the big question: how did they learn how to do that? How long did it take before you figured out how to carve that out of a mountain?
Yeah, exactly. These are the questions that are absolutely not being answered by our understanding of history. These are the Red Ochre, the more rough ones are the ones in the Hypogeum. Incredibly old. Also a very good,
Is that other cultures have that as well, right?
Yeah.
The spirals.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So that right there is also in Newgrange in Ireland, like pretty much the same. It's
Right, but
some
not just
slight
those
differences,
two places.
but-
There's some other places.
Yes, the swirling motif is one of the oldest. I mean, it is one of the oldest. It's everywhere. But the implication of it being about sound is very interesting when you find it represented in places that are absolutely acoustically tuned from prehistory. Yeah, dude, it's weird. There's another one in Peru called Chavín de Ponta, which is there's a temple built above it. This is another thing that you find. I mean, this one in Malta, they haven't done this, but you do definitely seem to find layering, like Gunung Padang in Indonesia, where you have like the original structure below and people just piling up on top of it over time. So in Chavín de Ponta in Peru, you have this amazing temple site, but below ground is a labyrinth of corridors that also propagate acoustics to the point where it brings up infrasound. So below this is an infrasonic laboratory, essentially, of labyrinthian passages that we used for ritual acoustics. And they actually found inside of this conch shells that had been purposefully re-engineered to produce an inharmonic that went into them. Like they had actually changed them into a different
So they go in the acoustic chambers
and below the conch shells, and someone would obviously be walking through this perhaps as a form of rite of passage. But
Imagine going back in
I
time.
know, man. I really want
Just
to.
being a fly on the wall.
I wish we could. Yes, it's not incredibly profound stonemasonry, but it does produce infrasonic reverberation. They have proven that. I looked it up. And yeah, the conch shells were found there that have got all of these designs on them and have been purposely changed to produce a different sound. So there is a clear lineage of acoustic science way before acoustic science was acoustic science, at least to our terms. So it brings up big questions. And the fact that it was influencing consciousness. I think that we just had an incredibly intelligent but shamanically orientated society at one point. We were using our human ingenuity, that we were using to create effects more spiritually than anything else. And these are all chambers for inducing expanded states of consciousness.
The real question, though, is what technology were they utilizing for construction? That's the real question, especially when you get to the negative stuff.
Yeah.
What were they doing? Like, what is this? Because this is not what we're saying it is. There's no way this is stone tools. There's no way this is copper. This is something nutty.
Well, that's why the nubs are interesting, because it almost seems like the stone was being softened, and perhaps like, if you were pulling a spoon out of hot toffee, you'd get that pullback, right? You get like a little kind of protrusion.
Wouldn't you want to smooth that down, though?
But they do. They don't. That's what's really weird about it, especially in Peru. Peru has so many stone nubs. But there's a place in Peru called the Coricancha, which is like the kind of main temple in Cusco, the Sun Temple. And these precision, there's various layers of architecture in Peru, albeit it's all being attributed to the Inca, which is weird. Rough cut stonework, then the weird megalithic kind of smushed together stones. Then you have what's called ashlar stonework, which is where it's like a bunker. If you look at it's spelled with a Q, Qorikancha, Coricancha. If you look it up, and look in, so you have to go inside it really to really get this, the bunkers inside of it. It's pretty, look at the wall on the outside actually real quick before you do that. If you click on one of these images, I'm just enlarge it. The first one's probably the best one. Yes, that's ashlar stonework. That bottom bit, that is original. This was built by the conquistadors, right? The rest of it's been built up by the conquistadors from Spain. But this original stonework is also represented inside with these incredible bunkers. So if you type in like bunker, it's got this image here, the level of precision on these is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we're talking just complete, precise fitting stones, not globular like saxowoman, like marshmallows, but just precise blocks. Like these bunkers here, like down here. This is all original work, and they built a Spanish-inspired temple over the top of it.
So what you're asserting is that this was here first?
Yes, this stuff, it was here first. Like, this stuff was absolutely here first. And if you look up, there's a little nub, little stone nub right at the top there. Yeah. And some of these walls have like 10 nubs on them, like one here, and then there's none. So it's like they were smoothing out some of them, leaving others. Some have speculated that it's a form of language, because in Peru, the Inca, do you know what the Inca language was? Their written language, it was called people, and it wasn't written. It was pieces of string with knots on them in different colours. Oh. That was their historical language. So it was literally like a line of different strings, different lengths, different colours with little knots in them, which corresponded to data. And most of this was lost by the Spanish conquistadors, because they went over there and was like, burn this shit, burn this pagan nonsense. Yeah, this was their language. This was their language. And it just made me wonder, obviously this is a complete guess, but it just made me wonder if like the stone nubs are stone people. Is it a stone version with all these different nubs in different places and different areas? Because it just feels like, especially in the Coricancha, which is a temple, it's a regal temple, why would you leave the nubs on? Like you said, why wouldn't we smooth these down? So it's almost like it's meant to tell us something, and they're left in very specific areas. Then, in Peru, you get stone nubs protruding straight out of bedrock. That's what weirds me out, is that it's not just on the crafted stones, but like a sheer rock face that's been obviously kind of quarried down by some unknown technique without any chisel marks, just straight. And then you have like a group of nubs coming out of the stone. So Peru is just full of contradictory architecture. And I think that, the Spanish went over there and they saw places like Sacsayhuaman, and they attributed it to the Inca. They attributed the Inca, the Andean shamans say it's not the Inca. The Inca themselves, to the Spanish conquistadors, said we found these places. But we take the words of the Spanish conquistadors and we apply it to our knowledge set and we teach that. And it's just like I was saying to you before, we're basing so much of our history off of like the word of people from like the 1800s, when clearly we're seeing contradictions of that, even in, as Graham Hancock would certainly say, the oral traditions of the local region. The people are saying different. But we're listening to the foreigners who went over there and destroyed things, burnt the people, and went back and taught us what their civilization is all about. It doesn't make any sense. Wow. But yeah, Peru's fascinating, dude. Peru is one of the most interesting places I've ever been.
It hasn't had the same level of discovery of.
Not like Egypt.
No.
No, I mean like there are areas in Peru. In fact, shout out to my friend Raul Belecki from Pillars of the Past. He's a guy who's out there in Peru, literally just going out into the middle of nowhere. He's found pyramid sites in the middle of nowhere that have absolutely zero recording, no excavation, no study, no name. Just they don't exist in record, but they're out there in the middle of nowhere in Peru. And so like Peru has. He found a pretty impressive complex, actually. He found a pretty impressive complex. He's got videos of it, like drone footage.
So it's like one of the places where you could actually still be able to explore and find.
Yeah. If you want to go off into the Andean mountains, like he's finding stuff in the Andes, high up in the mountains that nobody's documented. Like nobody's seeing it. He's a real adventurer. But it just proves that, yeah, like I said, there are still places like this where you can do discovery.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Peru's.
That is really.
And then obviously you have the Amazon rainforest. Right. All of the things that could be in there from LiDAR, we're already seeing so much geometry, so much evidence that there was a massive amount of civilization going on in that jungle. So, this is getting very interesting to me. And again, this weird climatological stability through the last glacial maximum, the Younger Dryas, this period of about 6,000 years where they had access to development without being disturbed. So, you have these incredible anti-seismic, anti-earthquake megalithic structures in Peru using materials that they shouldn't have been able to use, using multi-ton stones. That's an interesting area, although I will say that it's made out of tuff, which is volcanic rock, very easy to cut because it's actually compressed ash. So that's a really cool place, but it's not as mind-blowing in terms of how they cut the rock because it's extremely soft rock. But
so this is doable.
This is doable. This is doable. But there are other things. In fact, if we could you go on my YouTube channel real quick? There's an area in Sacsayhuaman which has got there's a diorite outcrop, which is an incredibly hard stone. There's a measurement of hardness scale that goes up to 10, with diamond being the hardest, and diorite sits at about 6.5 to 7 out of 10, whereas bronze sits at 3.5 out of 10. So there's a discrepancy with the hardness of the material to start with. But yes, there's if you go back to the sorry man, I wish I could see the screen. It's going to be difficult, I think. Keep it playing though, and I'll talk about this and it'll come up in a moment, I'm sure. But all across Peru, you have these incredibly precise cuts into bedrock with very little evidence of any sort of chisel marks and no real understanding of how they were able to excavate it. And these incredible just voids into the rock. But there's one area in particular, this is just the beginning of my video, but there's one area in particular in Sacsayhuaman, which is this gigantic, in fact you could probably type it in if you typed in Sacsayhuaman diorite steps or something like that, but I know, S-A-Q, S-A-Y, Sacsayhuaman, W-A-M-A-N, yeah, Sacsayhuaman diorite steps. Diorite spelled, sorry mate. Yeah, D-I-O-R-I-T. It's alright, brother. But I mean, like, I think we're actually getting.
Yeah, I'm trying to listen while I'm typing in this.
No, I know, that's alright, dude. But yeah, so yes, that's the one. So this is diorite. This is incredibly hard stone. To give some context, the stones at Sacsayhuaman are extremely impressive, but they are made of limestone, a little bit softer, a bit more workable. This is impossible. If you can find a HD, I've got a 4K video. That's why I wanted to see it in that video. But if you can find a HD image, it's shiny like a marble top. Like these are just precision cut into this huge outcrop of diorite, which they actually believe was a magma burst. So a huge blob of magma bursting out of the ground and formed into this huge stone mound that's adjacent to Sacsayhuaman. And you've got cuts like this, where it's just insanely perfect. And this is not possible with a Bronze Age toolkit. This to me is actually more interesting in some ways than Sacsayhuaman itself, because it's just a complete contradiction of the Bronze Age tools. You shouldn't be able to do that in diorite.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, how long?
it's smoothed down to a point where it's like shiny.
Like, what did they do?
And what's the purpose of it? Why? Like, and there's all these weird
involved doing
cuts.
something like that.
Yeah, there's all these weird little cuts into the stone like that. And across Peru, you just find like, you know, these voids where it's just like a 90-degree cut into stone, perfect finish, and no sign of chiseling. And so,
The back is smooth too.
and the back is also
How'd you
smooth.
get it out of there?
Dude, this is the thing, man. I just find that so like fascinating. This is
It's
what's really
clearly
fascinating.
seems like there's a lost technology.
Yeah, yeah.
That these ancient people had figured something out. They probably existed for thousands of years. They were probably really advanced, just in a different pipeline.
Yeah.
They went in a different highway.
I will say this, and I'm sure you'll be happy that I'm bringing him up. There is one guy out there who's trying his best to prove how they were liquefying stone and then bringing it back. And I only know his X handle, which is Fomahun, like Fomahun. I can't remember his actual name, but I've been talking to him. I'm thinking of actually going out to visit him and film him doing this. But he's been demonstrating making teddy bear casts of rose granite and things like this. And for a long time, he wasn't revealing how he was doing it, so I kind of just was like, whatever. Like, I don't think that you're actually doing this. But he's now actually revealed his secret ingredient, which is slaked lime. Like this slaked lime, which was very easy to make for them, and water glass, which again is something that they could have made. I don't know the science behind this, to be fair, so I'm just going to briefly say I think he's got some provocative ideas here, because he's actually adding like this water glass and slaked lime to, like, you know, mixed up compounds of granite or limestone, like crushed up granite, crushed up limestone, adding the slaked lime, adding the water glass, and then solidifying into solid granite, like within 6 hours.
What?
Yeah, and he's got like literal like teddy bear casts, like, you know, different like cookie cutter casts of solid granite. And so there's a potential that it's really simple, but totally been overlooked. You know, it's just using the right compounds, the right components, and the right stone mixture. Again, how do they learn this? But it, you know, it's not definitive. But he's one of the only people I've seen that's actually presented actual evidence that could explain how they were doing this. And it's relatively simple ingredients.
That would account for something.
Some
correct?
things, yes,
The
but not
problem
everything.
is the enormous. Okay, so this guy.
Yeah, so he's, I think so. If you go up, you can make sure he's actually the right person. Yes, he's Marcel.
Brilliant idea to create artificial granite with nothing as an additive to water glass, the latter being the glue between original granite grains. Why? Because I realize we need full transparency in order to clearly see the original granite grains like quartz. We need a fake quartz as a binder. Well, nothing did not work because the outside layer prevented the thing to get hard inside. Oh, well, nothing did not work, I guess. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah.
Now, what we're seeing is made with a secret additive, let's call it almost nothing, that did not change the transparency of the water glass, but forced it to set from the inside. So remember, this is the wannabe binder only of artificial granite, not granite itself.
It's very interesting, and he's revealed this slaked lime, this secret ingredient. For a while, he wasn't saying what it is, and now he said slaked lime. So I'm actually going to go out to the. He lives in Budapest. I'm going to go to Budapest and actually film him doing this to see if he's right about this. He's actually, I think, one of the originators of the whole natron theory, which I haven't dived too deep into, but it's one of the explanations behind melting the stone. So I started paying more attention to him once I was in Peru, and he was messaging me saying, you know, this is what I think is going on here, is they were using these ingredients to melt the stone, well, to solidify crushed up stone and create molds. My issue, yeah, my one issue I do.
Crush up the stones. That seems like it'd be harder than moving.
Maybe using harder rocks, like, you know, just smash. But yeah, exactly. You need to. I mean, how much stone smashing would you need to do to create sacks of Omaha and all these areas?
80 tons of smash.
Plus, every single block is different. We talk about millions of molds. Like, if we're talking about molds here, then every single block is completely different. So you need an individual mold for each one. So yeah, compelling idea. Does it answer it? No. Nothing ever seems to fully answer it, but it's, you know, compelling that he's trying to actually find a way to solidify the stone, and it seems to be working. Whether it explains all of it, I don't know, but there's certainly a lot of people that will say that, you know, this is the definitive explanation behind it. I don't think that, but
The thing that these
it's compelling.
amazing sites have in common is that they are so spectacular, no one really has a logical explanation.
No, yeah.
It's one of the coolest things about the most ancient of sites, is that it forces you to go, wait.
Yeah.
Even the best people don't.
Defies probability.
Yeah.
It defies probability. truly fascinating, man.
It was a national project. So simple. I get it now.
Yeah, I know, man. That's the thing, is like, this outdated kind of dismissal of everyone on the outside of the academic. Yeah, gatekeeping. You know, he wants to say he's not a gatekeeper. Clearly,
It's not yours, buddy.
did you know he came through the Edgar Casey Foundation? He did. Zahi Hawass originated in the Edgar Casey Foundation,
Wow.
so he got funded. And weirdly enough, he was actually quite pro these ideas until about the mid-90s. So there's like a 1993 quote from him at a university in Cairo where he was saying something along the lines of, there are tunnels underneath the Sphinx that lead down into greater structures, and when we truly understand this, we will understand the real builders of the pyramids. That was the last time he said anything close to that. Post 1993, about 1993, maybe 96. But after that, complete polar opposite 90-degree change. I wonder what happened to Zahi.
Who knows? I don't understand why. If you really want that place to get more money, more tourism, more people interested in it,
It's an
more
landscape
funding and
structure.
research, right? I mean, just be open to all these people that are like yourself and like Graham Hancock. Why wouldn't you not be open to these people and their ideas? Like they're clearly very well versed. Like Ben Van Kerkhoff,
Oh, yeah, he's brilliant.
he's incredible.
Fantastic guy.
He's an encyclopedia of information about Egypt.
Mhm.
And why would you not want that guy exploring publicly and also reaching millions of people, by the way?
Yes.
Why wouldn't you want that? It doesn't make any sense.
I think it's like maybe like a bit of a cultural arrogance. Like, who do you think you are, Westerner, coming over here and teaching us about our history? I think there's a level of that, like, you know, at least on the surface layer, before you get into the deeper implications of, you know, Freemasons, secret societies keeping things from us.
My true fear is that people just have this desire to be the one in charge of stuff.
Right. And the desire to be right.
They want to be the
correct.
boss.
They want to be boss.
They never want to be proven wrong.
And who's this guy? Who's this podcaster who's coming on and telling me what my country's heritage is? And you know, I
But
think
that's
it's
but the problem with that is like even mainstream archaeologists are angry about it.
right. Like, right. Well, everyone gangs together.
Yeah.
You know, they all gang together. It's a group thing.
Well, it's also
It's a lot of bitches in archaeology.
Yeah,
A lot of bitch-
I've noticed that.
bitchy people.
I've noticed that.
They're just,
yeah.
it's such a bad look for the
Yeah.
profession. It really is because immature,
Yeah, like snarky,
shitty
you know.
comments,
Yeah, I know.
aspersions of racism.
Yeah.
It's a really gross field in
I-
terms
I-
of like some of the humans are.
I came through the toxicity of the UFO community, which is like so bad, and you know, I
A lot
thought
of
it'd
kooks.
be a lot of kooks, but also just like a lot of bad actors and hackers and people that want to, you know. One thing on the UFO subject actually, which I do think is worth noting, because like I said to you, I think I'm one of the first people you've had on that have to actually make their way through the social media interactions. And one of the things that a lot of us noticed, and have to give credit to a couple of people like Red Panda Koala and Chupacabra on Twitter, two very good researchers that have been highlighting this, is that when the whole kind of 2017 narrative and Will Elizondo and Chris Mellon and all these guys started coming out, obviously we were all extremely excited about it. Over time, you know, there were some issues, like some
I mean, that was it,
contradictions.
that was it.
Will Elizondo especially has contradicted himself quite a lot, and some of us started to get a little bit suspicious of these people and just started asking questions. It didn't take long for us to be targeted by a pretty significant network online of people that were trying to hack and dox us, and people like, he hasn't put his actual name out there, but people like Red Panda Koala was doxed online, had his family house put out online, photos of his underage sister put out online by a group of individuals who are all very closely connected to Will Elizondo. And this is something that you would not notice outside of being in the minutiae of X, because you would see these troll accounts, these really nasty troll accounts that were all being followed by Will. And when they were having their accounts shut down and reinstated, Blue was one of the first people following them. Some people have actually come out about this group now and revealed screenshots of DMs where they're in private conversations with people like Lou and Gary and some of these other guys who I got connected to early on, very early on. I got some of the first interviews with these people and was very pro until I started realizing they were very much trying to control the narrative, and there were, you know, things you couldn't speak about, can't talk about, you know, reverse engineering or consciousness initiated contact. Anything to do with Greer is completely poisonous. Lou Elizondo was actually, he called Greer and a couple of other people terrorists. To say, I wouldn't negotiate with terrorists when asked about Stephen Greer. But what people have dubbed this as is the UFO hate group. It's a very well known online, the UFO hate group. And it's a group of people that are so savagely in favour of people like Lou and this kind of modernised narrative that if you even go half an inch, like I really gained my accolades in the UFO community. People were really praising me for the interviews I was getting until I started asking a few questions about people like Lou, and suddenly I get an absolute maelstrom of hatred from people that were once really enjoying my content. And I'm quite lucky, I haven't been targeted so heavily. Some people have had their lives ruined by these people who are all connected to individuals like Lou. And Lou actually said that he came to burn ufology to the ground. Like, he actually said that in an article. He was like, I want to burn ufology, I want to destroy it.
When did he say that?
Oh, it was like in a few years back now. You can
Why
get
did
it
he
up.
say it? What was the context?
I think it was just about the way in which the UFO community has, been misrepresenting the phenomena and like the confusing spaghetti junction of narratives, and he just kind of
But if he actually
put a
knew
hard
things,
reset.
doesn't that kind of actually make sense to say?
Does he know things?
You don't think he knows things?
What does he know?
I don't know.
Exactly. Right? They all know something, but none of them can tell us. They all knew it from someone else, and someone else told them, and they knew it, and they know this. And like, dude, I was so in love with all of this. You have to understand that I was a believer. I was like, this is amazing. I had my orb experiences, so I had a bias already. I was like, I'm ready to believe in whatever you're saying. It took me a while to start actually realizing that this is not going in the direction I think it should be going in, that there's a heavily curated narrative, and if you try and question the narrative, you will be punished by groupthink. It felt like, honestly, I started to feel like I was in a COVID cult for ufology, where you just can't talk about Lou Elizondo in a bad light, regardless of the fact that this man has gone on stage and presented literal fake UFO photos to the public, which have been debunked in less than 24 hours, and he had to admit that they were fake because of the debunks, but people are just happy to forget these things happened. Like, he went up in a congressional setting and held up a UFO photo that was proven to just be fields, like agricultural fields. Yes, this is a fake. That's not a shadow. That's a darker field next to the lighter field. These are two circles. And this was proven. He had to admit it. This is in a congressional setting. This man apparently ran the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. I call bullshit. I don't believe he did, because he seems like more of a government stooge. And he feels like someone that would be sent out to do what he admits he was doing, counterintelligence. He's a counterintelligence, counterterrorism, counter-espionage guy. Not a UFO guy, I'm a counterterrorism, counter-espionage guy.
He's also one of the guys calling for amnesty, right?
Oh, how surprising. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't he?
Color me shocked. Yeah, no, he is. Like, color me shocked.
Does he say that in the... Because a lot of them do say it. I want to make sure that he actually said that.
I don't know.
In the Age of Disclosure.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, Joe. I haven't even fucking watched it because I'm just not interested in that element of the UFO subject anymore. I've been burned by these guys. I've had Gary Nolan emailing me like, why aren't you on the team anymore? Why aren't you like be a team player? It's like, because you're literally telling me that I can't tell my own fucking truth. You're censoring me and saying that I'm not being a team player just because I have
What are they
questions.
censoring you about? What in particular?
Well, I was
Or attempting to get you to stop talking about?
Well,
specific?
primarily, there seems to have been a bit of an issue with the way that I've been talking about Lou and his association with ATIP, because I think that ATIP was actually a cutout. It wasn't a real program, and it was a cutout that was actually created for Two Stars Academy. And ORSAT, which was more of a kind of precursor program, wasn't being run by Lou Elizondo. That's the Advanced Weapon Application Space Program. I forgot the actual acronym now. ORSAT. ATIP is meant to be Lou's.
That's
and
right.
I just think
That's
that I have to be careful, but a very prominent journalist in the UFO community literally told me that Lou told him that this was all created for Two Stars Academy as like a way to generate an understandable structure. Here's this guy, he's running ATIP. I have an issue with the idea that someone like Lou Elizondo can go to the New York Times and say that the Secretary of Defense wasn't being briefed on UFOs, and I'm the one that was running a program, when people like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden are being thrown to the wolves for just revealing standard national security issues. This is meant to be even deeper, right? This is black budget. This guy can just roll out to the New York Times. Seems a little bit planned. Seems a little bit curated and forced. So I started asking those questions, and especially when things like this were happening, where there were discrepancies, where he's bringing up images that are being debunked. It was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy really? And then his book comes out, and he's talking about being the torture czar in Guantanamo Bay, and you know the people there called him the Darth Vader of the United States. It's in his book. He admitted they called him the torture czar of Guantanamo Bay because you know he ran Camp Platinum at Guantanamo Bay, black site, CIA black site.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you know, he actually had in his book that he was known as the Darth Vader of the United States by certain people, and the torture czar of Guantanamo Bay. I don't really trust people like this who, you know, waterboarded people for a living and are now trying to tell me what's going on in the UFO subject.
Well, let's ask this question: what purpose would there be to muddy the narrative if you wanted to have a government agent come out and have what you're claiming is like a fake disclosure, like a government narrated disclosure? What would be the purpose of that?
What are you asking for, Joe?
Money?
Amnesty.
Amnesty.
And what was happening before that is you had someone like Stephen Greer just saying these people need to go to jail. And that was the only big voice in the UFO community prior
Maybe
to Tom
they're
DeLonge.
offering a window to possible disclosure, though.
Maybe.
Like if we give them this fucking amnesty, if we don't, what happens? Nothing.
Yeah,
It keeps going the same way it's been going. There's no actual disclosure. We keep talking about it. It gets nuts. It gets to the point where it's driving you crazy. Like, I don't even want to hear about any fucking UFOs until you show me one. But if it's a real subject, and the only thing that's keeping us from learning this real subject is that. And so they're trying to push out this narrative of amnesty. I'll bite. What are we talking about?
I think for me, again, coming up through it and just seeing how these people actually act when you challenge them, and the fact that there were absolutely organized groups of, quite frankly, quite mentally unstable people that were very easily misled into believing they're important,
Right.
who were getting brought into these signal chats, these private group chats, and, you know, I'm in touch with this, I'm one of those guys, I'm being brought in. And, you know, they try to do that. Yeah, useful idiot. And, like, there's a lot of them. And, you know, there's a few people out there that are extremely dark individuals. Like, we're talking, like, you know, connected to all sorts of weird Satanism groups. And Lou's just there with selfies, like, hanging out with these guys. Like, he's a dodgy dude. I don't care. He's like, you know, I'm freaked out even saying this on the Joe Rogan. You know, he's like, he's going to remote view my brain or something. But at the same time, he is a dodgy guy. Like, he's shady.
But you do believe in the existence of these things.
Dude, I've had orbs hover over my house.
Right.
Like, yeah, like,
So
reverse
what
engineer.
you think is that there is a clear decision somewhere in our government to muddy the water and to put out this narrative that these whistleblowers are trying to tell everybody, so to slowly trickle this stuff out there and then float out amnesty,
Yes.
which is a big part of the age disclosure documentary. Really the first time I've ever heard anybody like where everyone uniformly talks about that one particular subject.
Yeah, like I think that's the goal, is to create a curated soft disclosure that does the very best to paint the government in the best possible light and allows them to actually kind of not face too much punishment for what's been going on in the legacy programs. Again, if you only had someone like Stephen Greer out there, he was offering a completely different thing. We need to punish these people. Like, they are criminals. They've ruined humanity for 100 years of stagnating technological progress.
You got a little tested. Got a little tested with that. Should have taken a little softer tone. No, I'm saying with him. Maybe if he did that, maybe they would have. Not been so defensive. Like, fuck, they want to lock us up.
Yeah, but that's it. That's why.
As soon as you say you're gonna lock someone up for what they did, then he's like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
They're gonna keep saying that.
But that's why they got rid of him. That's
Here
why
we
they
go.
got rid of him. That's why Gary Nolan, who was originally with Greer, then changed over to Two Stars Academy, and they poached quite a few people from his team and brought him over to TTSA, and he became a pariah. You know, again, it says a lot of things that, quite frankly, I don't agree with, but I just think that basically they tried to overtake the narrative and they needed government representatives to run this. And just, again,
How they do everything. Why would we be shocked if they do it about something this important?
Well, exactly.
Especially if there is lying to Congress, misappropriation of funds, and for sure some wrong. For sure, you're talking about a shit ton of money.
One thing that does interest me though is the ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, the Flux Liner. Have you heard of this? You know about Mark McCandlish and the Alien Reproduction Vehicle? Oh, well, that's something you should know. If you type in ARV Flux Liner, you'll get this image right away. This is one of the avenues that I would actually pay attention to and think, okay, I think something's going on here. Mark McCandlish was an aerospace illustrator for the US Air Force. That's so the actual...
Oh, I have seen this.
Yeah, of course you have. It's very classic. And that one that's blue with the writing all over it, that's what was held up at the 2001 National Press Conference organised by Dr. Stephen Greer. Again, like, you know, this isn't new. Like, to be fair to Dr. Greer, he brought like over 50 witnesses on live television during the National Press Conference, and one of them was Mark McCandlish, military illustrator, who drew this sketch.
A friend of mine has a version of this framed in his house.
So do I.
I need to get one. We need to get one for the studio.
You can literally
right?
get one on Etsy for like $100. It's
Let's
like
fucking
big,
go,
a big
Etsy.
one on Etsy. But so this is important. Mark McCandlish, he
So I
actually
can
ended
get
up
here
taking his own life.
Go back to that.
And when I
one.
get here, just try to
I
play
want to
a
read
game.
the heading. It says, according to this documentary, we had the technology for faster than light travel and 0-point energy for a very long time. Let's pretend this is true. How do we know the UAPs we sent aren't ours and more modern
The
built?
person who made this documentary died of an aggressive form of cancer not long after making it. He was quite a young man as well, documentary filmmaker who made this. But Mark McCandlish, military illustrator, he had a friend called Brad Sorensen. Brad Sorensen was a government guy, aerospace engineer. Lockheed Martin had quite an extensive portfolio.
Oh my god.
And Brad Sorensen goes to his buddy one day, Mark McCandlish, and he says, I was shown something, and I want you to draw it. I'm going to describe it to you in great detail, and I want you to create an illustration.
Oh my god.
Brad Sorensen says that, I think it was in like the 70s or like late 60s or early 70s, that he was invited to a private air show at Lockheed Martin by an individual who was a good friend of his in the military, who was higher up than him. And apparently, this, you know, he didn't have what they call the tickets, the right classifications to actually get access to this private air show, but his friend brought it because he had the tickets. And essentially, they bring him into a hangar in Lockheed Martin where 3 large saucers of varying size were hovering a few feet off of the ground. They were described as instantaneous nuclear payload delivery systems. That's the way that they were actually classifying them. Had a nickname for them, instantaneous nuclear payload delivery systems. Like the idea that you could just instantaneously deliver a nuclear payload to anywhere in the world.
Oh my god.
Yeah, which is again one of the reasons why they might keep this stuff secret. The ships were nicknamed Mama Bear, Baby Bear, and Papa Bear.
Oh my god.
Yeah. What's really interesting about this is that Brad Sorensen has never gone public. But I was in the room when he was funded, and I've heard him say things that have never been on the record before. No one's ever contacted Brad Sorensen. Mark McCandlish took his own life a number of years ago. His closest friends would say that was not anything untoward. It's hard to know. I didn't know the man. All I know is this is the man that produced an incredibly profound illustration and eventually took his own life. But his friend Brad Sorensen has never gone public, ever. Never. I've got quite a few contacts now because of my research and affiliations that I've managed to gain with people in the US Navy and Intel, and a good friend of mine who was able to actually find his number and get in touch with Brad Sorensen. I was present when he was funded, and my friend introduced himself to him. He'd never spoken to him before, and they.
Oh my
was
god.
talking shop. First of all, he said that he wanted to reach out to him because he'd heard about him through various stories online, but anyway, to cut the long story short, my friend asked him about Mark McCandlish and his alien reproduction vehicle, and Brad Sorensen went off on quite a diatribe actually, very angry about Mark and how he said that I gave this man the keys to the kingdom and he went out and told the whole fucking world, and I will never do that because my employers will fry me. He said they will fucking fry me if I speak out about this. But I am capable of building and designing an aircraft that can go 210 times the speed of light. Yeah, he reiterated that multiple times.
What?
Yeah,
What year was this?
I've sat on this for a couple of years. It's about 2 years ago. My friend funded.
Oh wait.
Yeah,
oh my god. My mouse was
Instantaneous
stable.
nuclear payload delivery.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine that's how the national security system would actually look at this. Not as an exploratory vessel, but let's be honest, what is this? It's a payload delivery system that's instantaneous. Let's be honest. That's what they would look at it as, right? Another reason to keep it secret, probably.
Holy shit.
But that was, you know, I would love to get him on record. I don't know if you ever will, Brad. If you're listening to this, I would like to get you on record. But he said that he can design a craft that goes 210 times the speed of light. And this is the guy that gave Mark McCandlish the illustrations to create that ARV. So it's just weird.
I mean,
it's weird, dude.
This is the real question. What would civilization be like had this stuff not been kept secret?
Right.
What if we had access to that kind of energy, whatever that thing is operating on? Could you imagine if you had access to that energy and you're watching all these idiots burn coal?
I know.
Like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
But you can't say anything
Yeah.
because you have a instantaneous
I would
nuclear
hate,
delivery system.
I'd hate to be these people. I'd hate to be these
Wow,
people.
It's crazy.
Imagine sitting there knowing that we have access to these kind of technologies.
Also, like this desire to tell people something
Yeah.
that's really important
Oh,
to
man.
humanity. They can't all be complete sociopaths. There
But
has
maybe they do, like they screen them for that reason. You know what I mean? Like they have to be a certain personality type. They don't give a fuck
Yeah.
about humanity.
I think honestly, I think at highest levels of these,
Don't do that,
especially
please.
these
Don't.
Military corporations, I think you just have to become that
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
really
By
do.
force of nature.
Yeah, like, well, we're gonna kill 100,000 people today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how emotionally attached can you possibly
You can't.
be in
You
that
just have
kind
to
of
be task oriented.
position?
I don't know
So,
why he
you know, the ARV is a provocative one for me, and to be honest, I think a lot of this. I mean, it's called the ARV, the Alien Reproduction Vehicle, and maybe we have had alien crashed vehicles, but I'm more tempted to believe that Nikola Tesla's work was taken by the U.S. government. John G. Trump, Trump's uncle from MIT, was the one that actually oversaw all of that. You know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually looked at all that. You know, he found a correspondence between Nikola Tesla and British and Russian royalty, like the top levels of British and Russian royalty, about them acquiring a super weapon of incredible power. There's a video I actually posted it on X of John G. Trump, a vintage video of him talking about coming across these correspondent letters that he never found the true method of the secret weapon or what it was, but there was correspondence between the king and Russian czars about acquiring it from Nikola Tesla.
Doing that.
So I think that they took things from Tesla, his electromagnetism studies. I think people like T. Townsend Brown, you know, these original ideas of being able to use field induction to create positive lift. This is something that was being looked at by humans. You don't need to invoke flying saucers crashing from Alpha Centauri for that. Maybe it happened, but I would be more on the line that we've done it ourselves. We've done it ourselves. Some of it. The Cold War happened, Cold War paranoia, and we've never got rid of it. All the iron walls came up around that, and it's a case of how do we kind of get rid of all this legacy program, you know, stoving and stovepiping because of Cold War paranoia. It's too late now because we're in 2025, and you've got to try and tell us that you've got 0-point energy.
Right.
You know, we've been flying around in fucking Wright Brothers planes for 100 years and shit. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's not going to go down well. So amnesty, right?
Yeah.
Amnesty.
Might be the only way.
It might be the only way, and if it is the only way, that's fine. But like I said, I do have.
It sucks that they're not going to get punished for crimes, but so what?
So what?
At least we are not being punished by being withheld.
Exactly. But,
Information being withheld that I think would change the course of humanity in probably a fantastic way.
but I feel like the world would have to become a more heavily controlled place for these types of technologies to come out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I was trying to wrap this up on a high note. Digital ID coming up.
well, that's all I'm saying. Like, you know, the control structures around something like free energy would have to be quite profound because of the things we were saying about some psycho with a ZPE device.
Exactly.
So,
Like, look what just happened in Bondi Beach in Australia. Imagine if you have access to that. If everybody has access to that, especially off the internet, you figure out how to design one. It's not that hard.
the
I
world would
can't
have to
stop
become a more
doing that.
restrictive place for these things to come
Oh
out for public
boy,
benefit.
Jay.
Yeah.
Now people are going to think you're a Fed
Yeah.
for saying that. Listen, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a lot of fun.
It's been real, brother.
And your content is excellent.
Thank you so
So
much.
please tell everybody how they can watch more of your stuff.
Yeah, I've got a terrible business acumen, so I just have two channels, Project Unity on YouTube and The Project Unity on X. And if you want to follow me and subscribe,
I think
much
that's a good
appreciated.
model. It's quality stuff, and
Thank
it's building
you.
a following just literally based on being good.
For real.
So thank you, brother.
Oh,
Appreciate
thank you so much, dude.
All right, we'll do it again.
Yes.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Effectively, the creatures we see
Okay, I get it.
exist in a design space. and that selection finds the things that are similar to what you've got near enough to be accessed and advantageous, right? So if you have a rodent of one size and there is, let's say you have a rodent that specializes on a particular seed, and it exists in a habitat where there's another seed that's similar but much bigger.
Learn about biology.
Well, then you need to access the adjacent possible in order for a second species or subspecies of this rodent to evolve to take advantage of this untapped resource. So if you think of all of the things that you've got, and then all of the things that you might want that are similar, that's the adjacent possible. And my point is variables as one of the primary modes of information storage in the genome provides a mechanism for evolution to explore the adjacent possible in a radically more effective way than the story we typically tell about random mutations to protein coding genes, right? There's nothing un-Darwinian about this. Darwin didn't know anything about genes, probably to his advantage in the long term, because if he had understood genes, he might have made many of the same mistakes that we made in the middle of the 20th century in evolution, where we became overly focused on the genes we understood. But basically, everything that Darwin said was about a vague hereditary information, and numbers is no less a candidate for that than triplet codons stored that code for amino acids. So my point is,
Amino acid.
Darwin is untouched. Darwin is still the guy who nailed it. And this is just as Darwinian as protein coding genes. It's just vastly more powerful with respect to taking
That was
the
me
form
dumb.
you've already
That was
got
me being
and
dumb.
finding a similar form that you don't yet have. Now there's lots of nuances about how this could work. There's lots of questions I certainly can't answer. I will say, as I was mentioning at the top, this story seems to be largely unaddressed in adaptive evolution space. If I come at it from the evo-devo side, I see much more description of mechanisms that work like this. But I don't see the revolution that should happen when you've come to understand that you have this very powerful additional evolutionary mechanism. That should be causing a massive uptick in the power of what we can address adaptively. And it does not seem to be there. So, I'm not at a university anymore. I'm not primarily working as a biologist. So it's possible I've missed something. But there's, as you know, we have massively dysfunctional institutions. And I've thought my field was stuck in a ditch since really before I entered it. The last major progress in my field was 1976. And
Really?
that's what I think. Yeah.
What was that?
The selfish gene provides us a mechanism. It's basically a synthesis of what we understand about adaptive evolution. It provides the first gateway to understand cultural evolution in rigorous Darwinian terms. I don't think that gateway, I don't think we ever went through it. In fact, when I've talked to Dawkins about his effective discovery, the meme, he doesn't seem to understand the power of it. He thinks of it as, he says in chapter 11 of The Selfish Gene, he says that the landscape of memes...
That robot is nullscapes, bro.
Which is not what it is. It's actually a solution.
That robot is nullscapes, bro.
For how to evolve things like humans more rapidly than can be done at the genetic level. We can evolve at a cultural level, which solves a problem that genes can't solve directly. And that means that all the space of human culture and the culture of other creatures, but our culture is vastly more refined and powerful and diverse. But that space is basically an enhanced, it's another enhancement to the toolkit of Darwinian evolution, which we have unfortunately often dismissed as non-evolutionary or as a parallel kind of evolution rather than as a turbocharged adaptive evolution that is targeted at the same objectives as our genes are, which is what it really turns out to be. So, in any case, that was 1976. The thing that has been a revolution since then was Evo Devo, evolution of development. But it didn't come from the Darwinists. It came primarily from the developmental side. These are people who were focused on mechanism. And so, in some sense, the story of the failure of biology to update our evolutionary model is the result of a historical accident, right?
What was that?
So the first Darwinists, including Darwin himself, were not focused.
I know
on
Darwin. Darwin is
molecular
the one
scale
who
mechanisms,
realized
because they couldn't. They didn't have any tools.
we
to
are
do this.
evolving.
And so they
Yeah,
were
we are
creatures,
evolving.
and they saw patterns, and so they became very focused on recognizing
like a
the patterns
natural
of what they
selection.
imply about what must be going on.
Yeah,
inside.
natural
But
selection.
They got out of the habit of thinking about mechanism because the mechanisms weren't available to them. Developmental biologists were exactly the inverse. They didn't really have patience for evolutionary thinking. They were purely about
Yo,
and
it's good that I
all kinds
actually
of
know
experiments.
something. Now that I,
you know,
oh my
taking
god, I
a
should have
piece of
said,
one
you know
egg
what?
and grafting it into another
know what?
egg
Why
and
am I
watching
not
the
ready,
monster
bro?
that is created when the egg is getting the same signal from two different directions, like that kind of thing. And you know, Evo is a very good start on bringing these things together, but I don't know if it's academic territoriality or just lack of imagination that seems to be preventing the revolution
I'm
in our
stopped this.
understanding
I
of the most
can't. This shit sucks.
powerful process that exists, and it's frustrating. So anyway, I hope others will take this to heart. It could easily be that the larger point is right, that variables in the genome are very important, and that the variable number 10 in repeats are not the way that they are stored. That would be interesting. Maybe the variable number 10 in repeats are the way it's stored, in which case there's an awful lot to be learned about how that information is read. In other words, if once you know that that's true, if it is, then the question is, okay, well, how do we look into a particular genome and see the mapping of those variables onto the creature that we see running around in the forest, right? That would be an amazingly powerful mapping to have. So, anyway, I didn't want to leave it as a vague allusion to a hidden layer. I wanted to point to a hidden layer that would explain how this process that we've all learned about might be much more powerful than the story we've been told about it.
I was watching a documentary once on the BBC about the Congo, and it's a really amazing documentary. And one of the things that it points out too is the rapid development of new abilities that these animals have that live in the Congo that used to be on the plains, and as the rainforest expanded, they were kind of trapped in here. And one they pointed to was dikers, you know, those little small animals that now have the ability to swim underwater for as much as 100 yards, and they eat fish. And they were talking about it like this is this fantastic development because they know how long it took for the grasslands to have been overtaken by the rainforest, and it wasn't that long. And it didn't seem to account for the adaptation that they were seeing in these animals.
This is exactly the thing that bugs me, is imagine what would have happened if there was not an enhanced evolutionary toolkit to that creature. It would have gone extinct.
Right.
That's the story again and again, right?
Well, it's a story with humans, right? Inuits. It's a story with people that live in extremely cold climates, right? They've developed all these adaptations to be able to survive
I am
in this
not
intense
focused.
weather where people who live in the tropics, if they moved into that environment, they would die.
It's the story with every clade of creature.
I'm stupid.
This is a chaotic planet, right? At levels that I think maybe we don't even fully yet appreciate. the difference between committing to a particular way of existing that seems really awesome for some period of time and then is suddenly impossible, and the ability to leap from one way of being to another is the key to getting through time, which is what evolution is doing. Right? I always phrase it as the purpose that evolution points towards is lodging your genes as far into the future as you can get them. And people don't fully appreciate when I say that, but it's not just the clever rephrasing of what might be more standard when found in the textbook. The point is, anything that satisfies that objective is valid. So, for example, if you have, so the process is one of my favorites to think about.
Easy
It's called
demon
adaptive
only, bro.
radiation. Adaptive radiation is where you get some
no matter
creature
what.
that either solves some problem or gets to some place,
Medium demon at best.
diversifies, and you get 50 or 100 or 1,000 species that are derived from that initial discovery, right? So you get this blooming of forms, right? The first bird, what was the first bird even doing? We don't know. What we do know is that we have 11,000 species now all doing slightly different stuff.
點似就老
Some
闆
of them not even fly.
Right, some
Hello.
of them lost the ability to fly.
點似
So
就
the
老
point
闆
is, the discovery of
Wait, wait, wait,
birds
wait,
opens
wait.
up a huge number of
Okay.
potential discoveries.
就你攞得
Evolution
聽
would be
你
a dumb process if it didn't effectively
That would be
search
the
that
idea.
space. If it randomly waited to find each of those opportunities,
當邊
that's
換 attempt 你
so much less powerful than searching the space. And then, once you get the search of space, okay, so you get, 100 hits, you get some innovation, it provides 100 niches that you could move into from there. It creates 100 species. And it turns out most of those niches are durable on the scale of 10,000 years, but not 50,000 years. So you get a bunch of ongoing extension. But as long as one of them, or two of them, have gotten through that bottleneck, right, the huge blooming of branches and then the pruning of branches, the ancestor has now gotten to the future in the form of however many species made it through that destructive process. It is selection at a different scale than we typically think. And so, thinking of evolution as this dynamic process that is not only searching design space, but learning to enhance its capacity to search design space in order to get into the future is the way to think of it. It's much more powerful than the clumsy version that we described, even if we don't yet understand where that power is lodged. If we were imaginative, we said, okay, what would I do if I was evolution to enhance the likelihood of getting to the future? Well, then you start finding these explorer groups. And, I understand I would be ridiculed for saying that because it imposes on selection a direction